Hey everybody, Jeff Bevox here. Today I'll be walking you through the Ableton Live Set that I'll be using in my next solo live performance. I'll walk you through how I planned on creating the live set as well as the live set itself. So let's get started. All right, the first thing I did was kind of figure out which songs I wanted to do in the live set. These are ones that lend well to either live looping or maybe playing along with the backing track with some live instrumentation or maybe some vocals with it, maybe a little bit of both. So I went through the songs that I produced and tried to pick out the ones that kind of fit the bill for those ones. I also have a few covers in the set, which require a little bit more work because they weren't my songs, so I had to kind of start them from scratch to get them laid out correctly, to get the instrumentation right. But they're songs that are probably going to be interesting to folks that aren't intimately aware of the music that I do. All right. So anyways, once I have the songs figured out, what I want to play, what I'll do is I'll crack open the spreadsheet that you see right here. I'm using Excel, but Google Sheets, you can use that, or any other kind of spreadsheet type software. But I highly recommend that you set up some kind of spreadsheet to help you plan on how you're going to create your live set, because there's going to be a lot of coordination between songs. One of the things I do like to do is limit myself to 8 tracks per song. And what that allows me to do is to visualize the whole thing on the Ableton Push. Ableton Push is set up with a 8x8 grid, and just limiting myself to 8 tracks per song, that allows me to manage everything through one kind of screen or one layout on the Ableton Push. Now there's other hardware out there that's similar to Ableton Push, the Novation Launchpad or the APC40 are things that come to mind for that, or maybe an Ableton Push 1, which you can find out there. All of them will be very useful for when you're doing your live performance, for triggering the different audio clips in the different tracks. And some of them actually let you play it as a melodic instrument. So if you don't have a keyboard, you can use your Ableton Push or Push-like device. Okay, so what you'll see here is that I've got the spreadsheet laid out very similar to the way Ableton Session View looks. We've got tracks, and along with those tracks, I'll scroll over so that you can see there's 8 there. I do have some other ones that don't need to be on screen. These are my utility tracks. Got one that's running a couple of Max for Live devices that can coexist together. And then I've got another track dedicated to the Push Hacker, which I highly recommend. If you have a Push, I think it's like $18. It's well worth the cost to have that. It lets you remap a lot of the features, a lot of the buttons, the rotary knobs, to whatever you want, and you don't have to switch over to user mode to do that. So very, very much highly recommended if you're a Push user. Okay, so we have rows for each of the songs that we're going to have in our live set. We have some song level data that I like to capture here. FLR is fixed length recording. How many bars do we want to record per clip slot recording? So I've got 8 bars for Birthday, 2 bars for Angel, 8 bars for Blue Monday, etc. What the tempo is, beats per minute. What the global quantize value is set to, how many bars that is, and then how many tracks. This track count could change as you're working the song into your live set, based on resampling, based on converting things from MIDI to audio, etc. So these things all may change. One of the other things I call out here is that I've labeled whether or not a track is audio or MIDI, or, as I showed you before, whether it's just a utility track or a set of tracks. I do like to limit myself on the number of MIDI tracks, just because they take up more resources, and when your resources start running low while you're performing live, that can be dangerous. It could lead to audio dropout or some latency where when you're playing something on your instrument, be it a keyboard, even a guitar or bass or something that's analog and plugged in, that latency could cause you to get out of sync with whatever's being played along with it. So, yeah, that's why I want to keep the MIDI tracks down to 3 and then audio for the remaining 5, just to save on those resources. The other area here I have below, which is also kind of against which tracks is the instrumentation. I'll be using instrument racks to switch between the different instruments on the tracks, which helps with also keeping track of the resources that are in use at the time a song is playing. So only during like birthday, this instrument will be live. These other ones here will be turned off, and that'll save on the resources, because as if you were to have like a very wide Ableton Live set, you may forget to turn off instruments that aren't in use for other songs in your set. And that's another reason why to keep it to 8 tracks, so that I can kind of manage these instrument racks better and make sure things are turned off that aren't really going to be used in a song. Okay. The other thing you'll find in here is per track, you'll find a Clyphx script column, and we'll get into that. That's a scripting language that I use for doing a lot of automation, and I'll show you that when we get into the Ableton Live Set. All right, so let's switch over to Ableton Live. One thing you'll notice is that I have the track colors pretty much the same as the spreadsheet track colors, so that helps me go between the two and to keep things straight. All right, so one thing you'll notice off the bat, I have this red scene here, and this is where I do all of the setup for the songs. There's actually no music or clips or anything like that will actually play any audio. This is just to signify the divisions between the songs. One of the things that we have to do between songs is the tempo is different. Maybe in some cases the time signature is different. So we need to set those. And I set those over on the master track, which basically is like the scene controller. You may have missed it, but I think by default, the master track looks like this. If you pull it out a little bit further, you'll get some more things exposed here. And one of them is the tempo. And this is where you'll set the tempo for the individual songs, which was captured in this spreadsheet here. So basically take that number and plug it in right here. Like so. All right. If you do have a time signature difference, if like everything in this set is 4/4, so I don't have to worry about setting it. But if you have one song that's 5/8, one that's 4/4, this is where you would go and set that time signature on the side here. For this first song, I like to put the titles over here on the same row as the red bar here, which kind of indicates the song division or the song start. One thing you'll notice here is we've got clips in each one of these, but those clips themselves, let me switch to clip view here, are empty. And the reason why we have empty clips here is because we have to name them in order for you to define the Clyphx commands that you want to run when each one of these clips is run. And what I'll do is when I want to start the song, I'll just launch the scene, and what will happen is it'll cause all of these Clyphx scripts to be run. All right, so little note about Clyphx. Clyphx is a open source kind of pseudo control surface that you can install so that you can execute these different script commands, and you can chain these script commands as well. So you can have multiple script commands that would run when you hit the clip start button here. And I do a lot of automation using Clyphx, and I'll walk you through some of the automation that I'm using through the Clyphx scripts. So you can go to the github.com/ldroles/Clyphx-live10, and you can get information on installing Clyphx. Like I said, it was free. It works with both Live 10 and 11. So highly recommended, and I'll show you why in a second. Just to show you another thing here. This is the Clyphx manual, and this is pretty much all of the actions that you can execute as part of those Clyphx scripts. So there's a lot of flexibility there. Like I said, highly recommended to check it out. Good stuff. All right, so now you know how to get Clyphx. Why don't we look at some of the Clyphx scripts that I have in the set here that I'm using to automate pretty much everything to get a song ready to play. So what I'll do is I will rename, Control R to rename this. I'm not going to actually change anything in there. I'm just going to copy it out of there. And then we'll throw it in trusty friend Notepad++. Pretty much the format that the Clyphx uses is you always have to start it with some kind of identifier. And that's signified by these open and closed brackets here. You can throw a name in there or something like that. I don't think it's actually used for anything. So I just do an open and closed bracket, don't put any name in there. And then after that, you can start putting in the script commands, and to separate them, you throw a semicolon at the end of each one. So in this case, I name the track. I give it the track number, throw a pound sign in there. And then if you move your tracks around, as long as you use that pound sign as part of the name, it'll kind of reflect the track number. Show you if I over here, it changes it to 2, and the one that I slid over to the left, it's now track number 1. Back. So that little shortcut kind of saves you from having to go back and rename the track based on the number. You just put the pound sign in there. So naming the track, GQ is for setting the global quantization. That's basically how long it takes, or let's say every division of bars that a new clip that you triggered within that bar will start playing, if that makes sense. So for this song, I set global quantization to 8 bars. If there's any muting going on in any of your songs for this track, I like to, on all of the different song starts, I'll either turn mute on or mute off. For the songs, for example, where this track is not going to be used, I'll turn mute on, and I'll turn it off when it's going to be played, when something's going to be played on that track. Then we've got this stop all NQ command, and that pretty much stops everything immediately. That stop all NQ means not quantized, which means it won't wait for this 8 bars to roll around. It'll stop immediately. And then it'll also stop the arrangement view playhead, because it's always running when you're actually playing audio. The arrangement view playhead is also playing at the same time. So using both of these commands together, this will stop all clips, not quantized, and it also stop the arrangement view play button up here. Restart, that takes us back to location 1.1.1.1, pretty much the beginning. if you're looking at arrangement view. And then since I'm using a push, I'll put a little message on there that says, in this case, birthday is ready. So I have it, each of the song names will say that they're ready after that scene is played. I baseline the volume to 64, which is about negative 13 dB here. And then this is for setting fixed length recording to 8 bars. I'm not sure if that actually works. I don't count on it. I'll set the fixed length recording on the push as well. So I still have to do some experimentation with that to make sure that that actually works. You'll find a bunch of commands that start with DEV, and that means device, and that's what's going on, down in the instrument area. In this case, I'm just playing an audio clip, so I'm actually turning the device off. On track 1, that's an EQ for one of the songs that I'm using, but it's not necessary for this track right here. And then I put the push into session mode also. So that's another push command that you can do. There's bring up the manual here. Search for push. And here are all of the actions that can be done specific to the push. So, and that's the push mode. These are all the different modes you can put it in throughout. And that's it as far as track 1. There's some things that I only put into the first track. The global quantization, stop all, set stop, and restart. Those are only appearing in track 1's Clyphx script. So if I take a look at the next track, you'll see it's pretty basic. I set the track name, turn mute off, baseline the volume to 64, and then this command is a little different. This is what's used for selecting the chain on the instrument rack. So this is track 5, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different instruments that I'm going to be going between depending on which song I'm playing. And essentially, if I play this scene over here, you'll see that the chain jumped over to 112, which is going to select the Angel guitar instrument. Other interesting thing here is I have it also this chain selector macro, and this is just a macro. I have it also mapped to the on off switch on the child instrument rack. Show you that real quick. So if I hit map on here, you can see that the main chain selector is going to go between 0 and 127, which means it'll travel across this entire range here of numbers. But it also is mapped to the device ons for each of the instruments. Expand that a little bit so you can see what they are. And what I also did was map the same range that the chain is active, that this instrument rack is active through this chain range here. And if it's between 1 and 31, then it's going to turn on this instrument here. So if I manually move it, you'll see when I get to 31 that this chain should become active. You can see it kind of light up. All right. So just a word of caution here. When I first set up my chains, I set them up with like one number each, you know, so birthday guitar would be number 1, and Blue Monday, whatever it is, would be number 2. Indian Summer would be number 3, etc. And then I tried also doing the power mapping here to the switch. I also limited the range from like 0 to 5 or 6. What ended up happening is, as far as the device on and off mapping to the macro goes, it still was treating this rotary here, the macro, to be like 0 to 127, even though I'd limited it to from 0 to 6. It wouldn't turn on and off when I would expect it. So what I ended up having to do is have the change span the entire 127 range here, and then I could map the macro to the device on and off, and it worked as expected. So just keep that in mind. Always use your chains so that they fully utilize the whole 0 to 127 range there. One thing to also note is I don't have anything mapped to 0. I never map anything to 0, because if I want to turn everything off, then I set it to 0, and none of the devices will be on. And this is another way of saving resources. If a device is on, even though there might be nothing playing through it, it's still going to consume some resources. So, for example, right now I've turned on the CPU monitoring on each of the tracks, and there's nothing going on really, but it's still bouncing up and down here, and using CPU resources at least. So, as much as you can, only try to have things active that you're utilizing in your performance. So dev P1 maps to the first macro in the list of macros here. I removed all the extra ones because I wasn't actually using them, but you know, this is P1, this is P2, P3, P4, and I was setting it for the first song to 8. So if I play this, you'll see it jump to 8. The next song is Angel, and this one is going to jump to chain number 112, which is going to set this macro knob to 112. So if I play that, boom, it went over to 112. So now this one's active. You can see it's turned on. We got lights on here, and the first one is all off. All right. So I will include a link to download like an empty live set, so that you can kind of play around with this a little bit yourself. See if you find it useful. So that kind of covers Clyphx and how I'm using it. Well, one thing I want to call out too is I tried automating this all through using envelopes, clip envelopes, and it worked great, you know, when you set it initially, but as soon as you launch the next clip, it reset back to whatever the initial state was of the chain selector here. So that was one of the things that led me to using Clyphx, because envelopes are great for kind of setting the chain initially, but once you get off of the clip where the envelope was used, it reverts back to whatever the original value was. All right, one other thing I did want to cover, and that is how I am selecting the inputs used for songs based on Clyphx, or having Clyphx do that for me. Take a look at track 6 here. Track 6 on the first song, Birthday, I'm using a guitar input, and on the song after that, I'm using a microphone input. So I'll show you how I select those through the Clyphx commands. And essentially, it's this insub Clyphx command, and basically it allows you to pick which sub setting from your audio in device that you've selected. So external in, and then the sub channel from that is 9 guitar, at least initially for the birthday song. And then if we take a look at the Clyphx script for Angel, I'll hit play on there so you can see that the name of the track changes to Clyphx Live. And on this one, I'm using in sub 1 vocal mic, and that's what I've called it. So it selects it. All right. So if you're switching between inputs on your audio interface per song, that's the way you would do it through the Clyphx script. Another thing to note in the song Angel here, I'm playing guitar live. I just have monitor in, but I have some automation taking place behind the scenes, which is done through envelopes, and that's basically to set some of the values in the instrument rack. I've got some automation on track volume, turning some pedals on that are in my instrument rack here, and some other automation. And if you're playing live, even though you're playing live, if you run this clip, it'll still run all of the envelopes for you. So it'll still do all that automation through envelopes, even though your monitoring isn't in and you're playing live. All right. One other thing I'd like to call out is for MIDI tracks, it's really easy to create an empty MIDI clip. You just right click and then insert empty MIDI clip. But for audio tracks, it's a little different. There's no right click option to add an empty sample or anything like that. So what I have is just a simple 1 second silent sample. There's nothing there. It's really short. It's small in size, and I use that for dropping it onto the audio tracks so that I have something to name for the Clyphx script to execute from. And I also find that useful for the automation clips for when I'm monitoring in and basically pretty much playing live. If I want to do any envelope automation, you need some kind of clip in order for that to appear. You can't just create an envelope here because there's nothing to put an envelope on. But here I have my 1 second silent clip here, silent sample. And then with that, I can add envelopes and things like that. So it's a helpful little utility sample file to have out there. Another thing you can do is if you want to automate over time, you can still use that same 1 second sample, but you just have to change the BPM on it to something really high, make it 9,999. And that'll draw that 1 second, out to however many measures would match that. It would definitely be a really high number of measures that sample is for. And I can show you that real quick. So I'm going to change this to 9,999 BPM. And now this 1 second sample goes out to 494 measures. And this is on a 107 BPM song. So useful little trick, and it'd be smart to have just a little utility sample out there that's just 1 second of silence. Let's take a peek at the utils that I have here. So on this track, I have this one Max for Live device, which ensures that when you play a scene, that the next scene is selected for you. And that's the default behavior. If you have automation in the scene, like for Blue Monday, I have all kinds of automation to play a scene, and then after a certain number of bars, I'll have a follow action. So this scene plays for 2 bars, and then it goes to the next scene automatically. But unfortunately, what happens is that the next scene, when it's triggered through automation, it doesn't actually select the next scene after that. that makes sense. And that's what this Max for Live device does for me. Even through automation, if a scene is triggered, it'll, after the scene is launched that was triggered, it'll select the scene that's after it. If I didn't have this, if I hit the play button after an automated scene change, it would play the same scene again it was currently playing. All right. So you can find this device was developed by Toby Hunke here from AbletonDrummer.com. If you want to grab that device, go to his Max for Live devices, and it's free. You go to the free link here, and it's this device right here. He's got a bunch of other cool devices I highly recommend. So check them out. That's that one. Also on this track, I have this timer big. As you can see, it's kind of rolling now because we got the arrangement button playing. What this allows me to do is to have this timer on screen. You know, it's good size. It shows up really well. If you have a laptop or a display that you're kind of have on stage with you while you're playing. Stop here. Yeah, stop. So the song time stopped. This is great for telling you how long you've been playing this one song, what the active bar is, what beat of the bar, and then based on your global quantization settings, it'll tell you how many bars until the next triggered clip is played. So that's huge. It's kind of like your countdown. It's like you can start a clip playing anywhere, and you know exactly when it's going to start. Okay, so it's also got this locator message that you can set in arrangement view. Go to arrangement view here. There we go. So at 1-1, I have start. You know, so if I hit reset, it's going to take me back to 1-1, 1.1.1.1, and then show you the locator that's there. You know, if I hit play, when I hit bar 5, it will show bar 5 in this here. So it's a good way to give yourself some messages, some cues if you need to. So yeah, this is very helpful for live performance. And this is a device that I kind of improved upon. You can find it on maxforlive.com. And if you just search for FP Vox, it'll take you to where you can download it. This was originally developed by Mad for Cats, and I just made some improvements to make the display a little bit larger, cleaned it up a little bit UI wise, added that triggered starts in area, and yeah, it's very helpful for me when I'm doing my live performance to have something on screen that's telling me how long I've been playing this one song, and knowing when the next global quantization boundary is being hit. I'm using Push Hacker right now just for basically navigating between songs with a single key press. So basically you can say I want this to be key press number 1, and if I press the same key again, it'll jump down to this area. Press it again, it'll jump down to this area. So you're not sitting there, you know, hitting the arrow keys on the push. There's a whole bunch of other cool features in Push Hacker. Well, I'll put a link in there to it. It does cost money. I think it's like $18 and very much worth the money. But basically, you can take over any of the buttons on there, or actually the rotary knobs as well, and map it to any feature that you want that's available in here. And then basically it takes it out of the normal push usage and makes it a Push Hacker usage. You can find all kinds of tutorials on it out on YouTube as well. this track 11 here I'm using for routing to the in-ear monitor system that I'm using. And essentially, this allows me to get the master channel, which includes all kinds of mastering effects and stuff like that, back into this track here. And then I send the audio out to an external output on my audio interface. And that's what I'm listening to while I'm performing. I also have the cue out sent to that as well if I wanted to play to the click track or the metronome. I'm not using that for this live set so far because I try to set tempo early on, either with an audio clip loop or some kind of synth. So yeah, that's how I'm listening to what I'm doing. I think that's about it. All right, so that wraps up the walkthrough. I hope you learned a lot. I know I did in putting this together. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. I'll be sure to get back to you. You can find more information about the music I make. There's some blog entries there on this same topic, and you can get there by going to jeffbvox.com. And I'll be leaving links in the description below for how to get to the different utilities that I use. A lot of great tools out there. So if you'd like to see more videos similar to this one, feel free to hit the subscribe button below or smash that like button, as the kids like to say these days. And I'll be creating more videos soon in the future on subjects related to Ableton Live, maybe on some hardware that I've found that might be interesting to you guys. So yeah, feel free to subscribe so you get notified when those things come around. All right. So thanks a lot for watching, and I will see you guys soon. Peace.